Good morning. Thank you very much for getting up, coming to this. I know you were all out at Pirates of the Caribbean till 1 a.m. in the open space. I am Michael Moore, and we have with us, it's funny, we were walking out here, I said, is it Zal or Zal? And he said Zal. But that's really not the part of the name I've got the problem with.
Well, you didn't ask, so you're all on your own, Michael.
You probably thought, that's pretty cool. He's got the last name. He just wants to know if it's Zal or Zal. Well, we're really honored to have these two incredible individuals. I wanted their film. Actually, we were going to show if a Brit could have made it. We were going to wait and show The Company You Keep at the festival because it hasn't played Northern Michigan. But we played it for the 2 weeks before the festival. We heard that, so a lot of people here got to see it.
That's cool.
And so, anyways, I saw a Brit in Another Earth. It was the first thing I saw her in a couple years ago, Lincoln Center in the movie theater there, and I was so impressed, not just with the acting, but the fact that she also wrote it, and that the third part of your
Trio
of partners in crime, Mike Cahill was the co-writer and director of that. And Zal is the co-writer and director of The East, and we're going to show The East today. Is that correct? Yeah. So so we're going to talk a little bit about it, but we'll give a whole lot away, so you can have it fresh. And but I have a lot of hope for cinema as an art form. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. And I think that as a new generation starts to show us what they have, and in this case, these two wonderful individuals, that I think that we're not going to end up the way that I always fear we're going to end up, because we know that this business is ultimately run to make money, like any business, and it's not really about the art, and we don't meet a lot of artists in the executive suites of these companies. We meet a lot of nice people. There's good people, and they love the movies and all that. But nonetheless, I think that when I was young, and I guess when I started high school, that was the year The Graduate came out. So there was that whole spate of films in the late '60s and all through the '70s that were just an incredible time to grow up and learn movies. And I think the work that you're doing and others are doing is going to give us another. I'm just really excited about what's going to happen, not just with the three of you. Now Mike is an invisible third chair over there, but so many others. So let's get started by I'll introduce both of you to the audience. I'm studying your name right now. I'm going to say it's Batmanglij.
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 That
yes.
was a really good first.
Not a bad.
She's very sweet.
And you also co-wrote and directed, and with Brit in it, a film called this is the one film I haven't seen of you guys, The Sound of Her Voice.
Yeah, Sound of My Voice.
The Sound of My Voice. And Brit has really kind of blown right out of the gate here. First by making her own films with her two buddies here, and now getting incredible roles in films like Arbitrage with Richard Gere, played his daughter, The Company You Keep with Robert Redford, and I was just looking on IMDb before you came here, and you've got like 5 films coming out next year, and you're in the middle of shooting another one now, and all of that. So, let me just throw this out to both of you, and we can just start a discussion of the three of you went to Georgetown. You have a degree in anthropology, is that correct? You have a degree in economics. And Mike has a degree in...
Allegedly economics, but I never saw him sit in an economics class, so I don't know
philosophy.
what Mike has a degree in.
He ended up with a philosophy degree.
No, it's an econ degree.
I think he is economics, yeah. Business, too, I think.
You were just in the advanced classes, so you didn't see it.
All right, so now, right there, you have not chosen the route we've been told everyone must choose in order to make it in the movies. You have to go to USC or NYU Film School, and you have to pay $50,000 a year for this privilege, and then maybe you'll get to be a PA for the next 5 to 10 years on a set somewhere getting coffee for people.
If you're lucky enough to meet Michael Moore at a film festival and he lets you be a PA.
Well, one of the goals of this film festival is that many of the filmmakers who come here, we are here to help them rise out of the PA hell that they may still be in when they come here.
I think being a PA is kind of fun, though. Like, being a director is really lonely. At least being a PA, you're part of the community.
Well, and it's impressive to your friends, and it makes your parents think you're actually got a real job.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm the PA on a movie by Robert Redford.
I saw Redford 100 feet away twice.
Right. But Mom is telling everyone, at the church society.
There's a photo of Mom and Robert when she came to visit the set. Yeah.
So clearly, you did not go to film school, you did not study film, but I've thought now you're talking to somebody who didn't hardly even go to school. I lasted a year and a half at the University of Michigan, Flint branch. And you have to make sure you say Flint branch because the Ann Arbor people get really, hey.
I like the branch part, like it's a bank.
Yeah, the word branch was, they've dropped the branch now these days, but it used to be called Flint branch. And, so I have, very little schooling in me, but I've felt for a long time, especially now having done this for what'll be 25 years next year, is that I really encourage students who want to get into this to not go to film school. Not to spend that kind of money, to take economics, history, English lit, philosophy, broaden your horizons and your.
Someone's very excited. Someone from the Flint branch. Someone from the Flint branch is here.
And is an English lit major because they never get any respect. There are literally no jobs in the classified ads for English lit majors. They've been derided their whole lives for that, but they've read some incredible books that the three of us haven't read. But I believe that because I think the great stories, the best stories that make the best movies, and at the foundation of this is the story, come from having that sort of thing. So why don't you just explain to me this road from economics classes at Georgetown to becoming one of our newest and brightest directors and one of our incredible actors these days. Not to say or pressure you with that, but I think it's an interesting story, and I'd like to hear it other than just the interviews I've read with you guys. Who'd like to go first?
Well, I'll just launch into it. This is all you can pick up when I get shaky. Maybe part of it is that I went to a high school that was like a drama magnet school. So kids all over were sort of being bussed into this school for drama. And I spent 4 years, studying theater pretty intensely. And when I was graduating, all my friends were going to Tisch and going to Yale Drama School and going to NYU. And I had this feeling that, like, I had read a lot of Chekhov and a lot of Shakespeare, and I knew those stories, but that I didn't have anything to offer them. Like, I hadn't had any other experience. I hadn't studied philosophy or theology or other things, and, like, how was I gonna have something to offer these stories if I didn't have other experiences? So I went to Georgetown thinking I would just get a broad sort of liberal arts education and fell into economics, and then what really happened is Mike and Zal made a film together. There was a Georgetown Film Festival. It was the first year of it. It was totally strange because everybody at Georgetown is going to work on Capitol Hill or at Goldman Sachs after school. So, like, the idea of a film festival was very strange for that campus. But all these kids got really excited because it was coming sort of at the time when Final Cut Pro had just come out and people were editing on laptops now, and you could get these prosumer cameras, and the library had a few of them, and the footage looked really good. And Mike and Zal made this movie that was so beautiful that, I mean, it took everybody's breath away. I mean, it just did not look like student filmmaking. I mean, they were making something that was raw and colorful and pulsating and had a real complicated story. And so I basically stalked the two of them all over campus. I was like a lowly freshman with no friends.
PA.
Total PA. They were like cool upperclassmen. You know, I bumped into, or I had someone point out Mike to me, and I like tapped his shoulder, you know, in the middle of some sort of, you know, fair. And I was like, oh, I loved your movie. Is there any way I could be a part of it? And he was just like turned away and paid no attention to me. Then I like stalked Zal in a supermarket. I like followed him up and down the aisles as he was like picking out juice. He spends a long time picking out his juice. And I was like, oh, is he gonna get carrot? Is he gonna get grapefruit? And then I finally sort of tapped him. I was like, are you Zal? And he just kind of looked at me and I was like, I'm, you know, an economics student, but I'm also studying photography and I have access to all their lights. Could I come do lights on your movie? Like, and Zal kind of like looked at me and I was like, oh, this is going so badly. And then he was like, well, maybe you could be in the movie. And I was like, well, we could try that. And then we made a first. What I didn't know is he was actually conning me into being in a project that he hadn't shot, that he had the weekend to shoot for a film class. So I basically became his test subject for that first movie that was a project that was, and then after that, the three of us got very excited about the idea of making movies together. So that's sort of how it started. Zal, what are you going to add?
Do you think I was really conning you? That was your screen test. I could have had anybody.
He definitely could have had anybody. Ladies were lining up.
Yeah, so you know, I've been to Georgetown to speak or you know, I've been invited there, you know, a few times. I got to tell you, no offense to the Jesuits or anything else that's going on there. All the people are hoping to, you know, get elected someday and screw us. But I can't even, of all the campuses I've been, I can't even imagine a film kind of creative environment there. No, with no offense to your alma mater, but it just would be the most unlikely of places. And I'll bet you if we Googled it or whatever, I don't know if we'd find many filmmakers that have come out of Georgetown. So I just, and Brit, I think I've read this somewhere that you, when you did graduate, and I believe you were the valedictorian of your class, if you don't mind me.
By a country mile.
Yeah, by a country mile, yeah.
By a country mile, I don't know.
Yeah,
you were the best
Georgetown
student. You were the best student, like you had the best grades, and the second best grades were not even close to yours. That's all I'm trying to say.
I think that's actually a really
That was
bad
a secret,
thing.
by the way. We didn't know that. She kept that from Mike and I for a long time. So we thought she was just nice, and we knew that she was not dumb. She was carried herself well for like a 17. I think she was 17 when I first met her. And then one day I was looking for Brit somewhere, like a year later, and I think I'd already graduated, and I was looking for Brit, and I went all over campus, couldn't find her, and then finally her roommate's like, Zal, if you really want to find her, she's in the basement of the library. That's where she goes. And I went down to the basement of the library, and like there were all these cubicles. I don't think anyone had gone there since like the 50s. There was like a nun from the 50s still there. And then in the corner is Brit, and she has maybe 1,000 index cards all lined up, and she's just going through them like really fast. And I was like, who are you? It was like the La Femme Nikita. I was like, you actually go to class? You do your homework? Like Mike and I hadn't been into that really. And she's like, yeah, I do. So I was shocked when I found out that she, you know, had a perfect transcript.
But I think what you're saying is a really interesting idea, the idea of something coming at Georgetown. And I think part of why it worked or was exciting was because we weren't getting, it wasn't about the classes we were taking. Nobody was telling us how to be filmmakers. We weren't reading any books about how to be filmmakers. We were making that up as we went along. And we were really just encouraging each other. And I think because it was a somewhat oppressive environment, and we weren't competing with 100 other kids to make movies. It was like there was something raw and pure and creative about it. We were just relishing what we were doing, and it was an escape from the places where we were having to compete, like economics classes, you know, where everybody's vying for the best grade and everybody's vying for the summer internship. And then filmmaking became this it was this safe haven, this bubble where we were getting to really learn from each other and do what we wanted to do. And we just didn't know that that could be, you could do that to make a living. That was the shock, was to figure that out later.
Yeah, sometimes this work starts out as like a whisper. You know, you have this thing in you, and you know that it's worth something, but it's only as loud as a whisper. And I think if you go to an art school or a film school, that whisper can easily be crushed. You can easily say, you know what, I don't have the goods, I don't have the materials. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of Mike and Brit and I finding each other is that our whisper was pretty loud at Georgetown. Like we got encouragement right away. It was our films were entertaining. I don't know if they would have been at NYU Film School, for example. Like we were doing good stuff. And then the three of us sort of held on to each other because we didn't have anybody else creative in our lives like that. We held on to each other, and when we drove out to LA, we drove out the three of us together. And we lived together in a house, and we didn't have that much outside influence there either. Like we didn't have any connections or meet anybody, older filmmakers, Redford 100 feet away. Like we didn't have any access. And so that whisper grew between the three of us. It grew until we couldn't hold it in anymore and had to make our first films. And we didn't make them to like impress anybody. We made them because we had to. Like that voice had grown too loud between the three of us. It was like this child that the three of us had, and it was a wild child, needed out of that house. And that was something we didn't expect. We didn't expect our work to then connect. We were shocked when we got into the Sundance Film Festival.
Well, not just that though, because I was there, and I if I remember correctly, you had written a screenplay with Brit. Mike had written a screenplay with you while you're there in LA. Yeah. And then when you decided to shoot it, correct me if I'm trying to remember this, because you're the actor in both of these movies, essentially you shot one of them in the morning,
No, that's the writing.
We wrote one in the morning.
Oh, you wrote, that's how
Yeah.
I remember. So you wrote, okay. Yeah. So that was your writing process. You wrote one movie in the morning and the second movie in the afternoon or evening.
Yeah. And then at the same time we were working as documentary. I was working as a documentary camera woman, and Mike was working as a documentary editor on True Lives, MTV's True Lives. So we would do those projects on the weekend or a week, and we would run around and
that's how you made money. You worked on these documentaries.
True Life, I Regret My Plastic Surgery, True Life. I mean, some very unusual projects that led to some really strange adventures. And then we would get a little bit of money to survive for like a month, and then we would take that month and just spend all the time writing.
See, you described like the soul-crushing nature of perhaps had you gone to a different school or been in a film school at UCLA or whatever. But the fact that in order to make money, you have to make this awful kind of, I don't want to call them documentaries. It's just, but it's either reality television or some kind of nonfiction stuff that tickles the whatever of the viewer, and what does it look like if a woman's face is, or whatever the other things you did, but I know because I've seen this happen to so many young people who want to be filmmakers, and they get on that treadmill, and you can make decent money and survive, and then your dream kind of starts to fade and go back. And I find it very interesting that you described it as a whisper, because I think that inside of all of us, especially if you've had any kind of a dream or wanting to be creative, there's also that internal, well, in my case, it's a nun, but it could be a librarian, it could be, no, it's not, librarians are cool, but that's going, shh, stop that, get real. There's the real world out there. How are you going to make it? What are they going to say about you? You're going to fail. Just whatever those voices are. I mean, right? Everybody's experienced that. So to overcome that, I just find that really fascinating. And that after graduating, sorry to say it again, as the valedictorian of your class, I believe you were offered a job by Goldman Sachs. Is that correct? Or did you intern there?
I went to work there over my junior summer, and it's what you're talking about, this idea that there's a lot of people whispering or shouting at you that you have to get real, that you've got to figure out a real way to make a living, and that making a living can't be connected to something that you love, that making a living is about selling the hours of your life in order to get some sort of stability. And I found myself there in that place, and I mean, it was really terrifying. And I think I must have been, I don't know, 21 at the time. And I thought, oh my gosh, am I really going to do this? Am I really going to give up the hours of my life for just some sort of sense of like, I know that I'll be okay, maybe, you know? And I just couldn't do it. So I didn't take the job offer, and Mike and I actually I dropped out of school for a bit. Mike and I moved to Cuba and made a documentary there about Cuban boxers and ballerinas. And after that, it was just like, I didn't much care. After spending this time in Cuba, I think what really happened is I realized that I didn't need that much to be happy. I didn't need any things. Like that just having enough to eat and a place to sleep and doing the work that I love to do every day, that was the thing that I needed. And Cuba was really the thing that changed my perspective on that. Like, and after that, I was like, I don't really care how poor I am. I don't care if I fail or if I fuck up or if I make a lot of mistakes. Like, I want to try to do this work. And but there was a huge perspective shift that had to happen first.
Well, no kidding, because, I mean, you got one of those prized internships in your junior year at Goldman Sachs. I don't even want to call it a carrot. There was something dangling in front of you that told you you are going to make the huge bucks. Stay on the path you're on, and you are going to be living the life out in the Hamptons. And for you to actually... There's just another layer that you go over that, and then you decide, yeah, well, not that you decided this, but essentially the path to Hollywood was through Cuba. I mean, who would ever think that?
Yeah, but you know what's interesting?
But I know what you're saying.
You said something about something that made me think about rules. You know, I think you think that by following the rules that it's going to work out. Like, oh, if you want to be a filmmaker, go to film school, or you want to be bigger. And then at some point you realize that a lot of the rules are actually broken, and that if you want to do the thing you love and you want to do it well, you've got to be a rule breaker. And the thing about being a valedictorian that's so actually embarrassing and why it's not something to be proud of is it basically is a sign that you've been a rule follower, like a very intense rule follower for a lot of your life. And most of the texts that you've been reading and being indoctrinated by and regurgitating, it means you've never been challenging the status quo. You've never been challenging the thinking. The teacher says, read this, you read it, you spit it up on an exam, and it all keeps going forward. And at some point I just realized, like, oh, a lot of the thinking about how the world works is wrong. Like, it's all wrong. And it is going to rely on a lot of people breaking the rules in order for things to get better. And filmmaking is a big part of that, maybe. Young people making movies and going out to Hollywood and being like, oh no, I'm not gonna sell my first script to have somebody else fuck it up. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it for $15 if I have to, and that will be a more interesting life. I will be living a more interesting life than if I sell it for $20,000 so I can call my mom and be like, Mom, I'm okay, I promise.
Right, because when I was there at Sundance, this is 2011, right, when both Another Earth and The Sound of My Voice are both there, with you and Mike being the co-writers and the directors of each of those. I'm trying to remember. You probably were in your late 20s by that point, right? Is that right?
At Sundance?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was
okay.
26 or something.
Okay, so already, you're done with college at 21 or 22. And now you're in your mid-20s, and you're heading to your late 20s, and the friends, parents, I mean, Brit.
They thought I'd lost it. They really thought I'd gone over to the deep end. I mean, they would call. My parents would call and be like, "You and Mike and Zal are living in a collective delusion out there in Los Angeles. Like, when is one of you gonna wake up? Like, you're all..."
Yeah, because it wasn't just 1 year.
It was like collective schizophrenia is what they thought was going on.
It was like a lot of years.
That's what I'm saying. It wasn't like the parents will put up with 6 months of this. But
6 years?
6 years. 6 years later, and it's like, and then they love you. I mean, so they're worried about you. And
6 years later, and we didn't have one crumb. Like, we weren't PAs. Like, we hadn't even seen Redford from 100 feet away. Like, we had nothing.
Right.
There was no progress.
Right. Now.
Well, Well, there was progress, but it was immeasurable. That's the problem, is you can't
Right.
see the progress,
Right.
not even for yourself. And so that there's a lot of faith in.
Well, we were learning a lot from each other. We were.
I was learning a lot from you, and I was learning a lot
I
from
learned
Mike.
a lot from you.
And what did you learn from each other?
Well, like, you know, it's funny to get to know someone, to really get to know someone. Like, you were saying that there are people in the audience maybe who want to do this work and stuff. And I think that when people want to know, like, oh, should I do my screenplay like this, or should I contact someone? I think maybe you should spend 6 years getting to know two people. Like, in the pleasure of getting to know someone, really getting to know someone, is immeasurable in my opinion. I learned a lot about Brit, like specific things. Like, I thought that what she was saying, you know, I thought that she was a goody-goody for being a valedictorian, and I thought she was just, you know, I was buying that line, that regurgitating line, but that's actually not true. She actually loves to learn. I'm not like that. I don't know that many people who actually get pleasure out of it, get the same high some people get from watching reality TV or from playing football or running or whatever. She gets it from learning. And to actually see that someone else is different from you, that they get pleasure out of these things, to like sort of sit at the foot of that, it's a nice feeling. You learn a lot. You learn that people are different.
What a novel idea to take the time to maybe make a couple close friends. You know, I never hear anybody say that. It's
And to hold on to them when shit fucking hits the fan.
right.
You know, because it does. It does. Stuff will happen in your life that will knock you down, knock
Right.
you sideways. And we have, you know, there are a lot of great things in our America, but we have lost the sense of family. We have lost that sense of like people holding on to each other no matter what. And to be held and to hold on to other people, not just your boyfriend or girlfriend, but just, you know, people who matter to you just because you've been in the trenches. I think that's so important.
Yeah, you can't make movies without people. That's such the great thing about filmmaking as an art form. Like we were talking about painters and sculptors before, and they're they're lonely endeavors. It's lovely to make something on your own. You control it from start to finish. But filmmaking is it has to be collaborative. You need people. So if you don't spend some time getting to know some people who also really love movies, then it's hard to make them.
Right. Wow, this is really, it's so great to listen to this because and actually I wish we had more young people in here because I'd like them to, but we're taping this, so we'll force all the young people of Traverse City to watch this in school and then give them a test and grade them.
I hope they don't regurgitate.
You know, it's just as an aside here, because I've been working on my next film. In Finland, they noticed the kids were really not doing well in school, and a general sense of loneliness and unhappiness was, you know, the teachers and principals were kind of paying attention to this, and then so they formed a national commission to how do we make school better for kids, and the first thing they came up with was get rid of homework. And it's so counterintuitive. And I first heard that, I said, what do you mean? They said, well, no, they can give an hour a night of homework, kind of the way we had it, right, when we were younger and we turned out really stupid. But they said that the problem is the kids, we are making them do homework here in this country too, till 10, 11, midnight, and they're not making any friends. They're not going outside. They're not running around and just enjoying life. And that's affecting them in school and their grades and their real learning and all this. So they got rid of homework. They moved the school day not to start till like 9 a.m. instead of getting these kids up at 6 a.m. and making them carry those huge backpacks that are wrecking their necks and shoulders.
Totally.
All this crazy
Weird stuff.
And then they decided like teachers were like really important.
Shocking.
What? So they changed the pay structure of teachers. So they pay them like lawyers and accountants, but to be a teacher, you have to graduate in the top third of your class. So they only want the best who are really into education, and then they're going to pay them as professionals. So they've changed. So now if you go on the internet, the Finns are like number 1 or number 2 in just like every category, and not from the old Japanese way of you must study for 12 hours every night, but from a loving, the way you described how you learned and practiced your craft and got better at it and gave it the time, and 6 years later, you're there at Sundance with 2 movies. I just think that, I've just never heard anybody say that. It's just such a great idea, and it's never, ever suggested to somebody who says, I want to be a filmmaker. You know, so I don't know, just thank you for saying that.
That's such a cool story.
The fins thing, yeah, I'm really kind of blown away by that. I think that, have you heard of the Trilateral Commission and how what they found out about what their findings were
No.
about education? This is so interesting. So after the Trilateral Commission, which I guess was a bunch of powerful people, got together and wanted to know, the first thing, order of business, they wanted to know why did the counterculture movements of the 60s and 70s taken place, and why had they been so powerful? And the findings came back, and they were universal, which was education. The boomers had been better educated than anybody else in history, and therefore, when you're really well educated, you say, enough with this bullshit, I'm going to fight.
Right.
And so they said that the only way to stop these kind of demonstrations or movements is to lower the education.
Right. You have to. It's exact. No, I now know exactly what you're talking about. And they go on these retreats, Idaho and whatever, and they and basically what came out of this is that we do have to educate the populace, because we need them to be our workers in the stores or the cubicles or the whatever. So they can't be stupid. They got to be able to do some math. They got to be able to read the instructions, and they got to know how to pee in a cup so we can test them for drugs every month. And so the basic...
But they don't need to know how to find Iran on a map. Like,
No.
that's not important for
Right,
Yeah.
right. And this documentary we saw yesterday was pointing out how 85% of Americans cannot find Iran on the map. If you just give them a blank map, they could not put a pin on Iran.
Which I went to a public high school, and I'm sure that I probably graduated not being able to point out a lot of things on the map. And just grammar, just learning proper grammar and how to write it. I mean, it's shocking where public schools have gone. And by the time I got to Georgetown, I had to spend so much time just playing catch up just to be able to get to the place where I could write like a coherent essay.
Well, the largest classes now, and anybody who's a college professor or teacher in here knows what I'm going to say, are the remedial reading and writing classes for freshmen. Are the largest classes now because it's so god-awful, horrible. What these professors are having to, they can't read. It's just they can't. These kids can't read and write. But even with colleges now, I just read where you can get an English Lit degree in America, and at 20% of the colleges that offer the English Lit degree, 20% of them do not require that you take a single class in Shakespeare. How can you get an English Lit degree and not have to, at least for 4 or 5 weeks even, study Shakespeare?
I don't understand.
And so you're right, Zal. It's the dumbing down of this. It's just. And that's why I think why I started this discussion with the fact that you guys studied other things than film was probably very helpful on that level. But let me switch to something else here. Now, has anybody seen Another Earth? Is anybody okay, good. Yes, if you haven't, you can get it on Netflix. It's the kind of I'll call it science fiction that we rarely get anymore, the really smart stuff. So if you remember when you were in high school, and if you read Brave New World or Stranger in a Strange Land, or the really wonderful, even 1984, wonderful science fiction, and in film, that has the days of making a film like Brazil or I mean I've got a Spanish film here called The Last Days. It's a science fiction. I hate calling it science fiction because then I can't get anybody over 30 to go to it because they just think it's the schlock.
So I saw someone on Twitter had called it sci-fi, but PHI. Science
that's
philosophy.
good. I like that. Yeah. Okay. So
Twitter, man.
So basically, in Another Earth, Brit, near the beginning of the film, you caused the accident? I can't remember if.
Yeah, I drive into his side.
Okay, and kills this woman who is an accomplished musician, composer, has a family, and this act, of course, wrecks everyone's lives, including hers. But then you want to make it up somehow, and And then during this, why don't you describe what happens then? Because at first you think, okay, this is your typical.
Yeah, it's also sort of after school special. Don't drink and drive.
I wasn't going to say that, but yeah.
No, it is a bit. It is a bit like that. There is this accident, and this young girl who wants to go to MIT, wants to be an astronaut. Suddenly, her life is destroyed, and she's in prison for manslaughter. And the man whose wife is killed also survives the accident, but is in a coma. And 4 years later, she gets out of prison, and he's going back to visit the site of the accident for the anniversary, and so is she. And she sees him, this sort of lone survivor of the accident she caused, and she becomes obsessed with the idea of some kind of atonement, some way to make his life better. So she goes to his house and presents herself. She goes meaning to confess her crime, but she ends up presenting herself as a janitor or maid because she's already working as a janitor, and she starts cleaning his house, and they sort of form this friendship, and that becomes very intense, and he doesn't know who she is. He doesn't know that she's the woman who caused the death of his wife. And
so far now, we're not at the science fiction
No,
part,
this is all set against the backdrop.
But that's why the film it works so wonderfully, because you don't out of the gate have to have an alien coming and eating somebody. In the first 30 seconds.
There are no aliens eating people in the beginning anyway. But then in the background, there is this idea that the night of the accident was also the night of the discovery of this planet that has been brought into the rotation of our solar system through a bunch of scientific stuff we made up, and then it turns out as it gets closer and closer that it appears to be a continental match for this Earth, and then it seems to be when they make radio contact that there's doubles, that it's a literal mirror of this Earth. And is it real? Is it a parallel universe? Is it physical? Does it have mass? Or is it some sort of holographic projection? And all of this is sort of going on against the backdrop of these two people who have sort of had their lives ruined in an instant, and are both the kind of people who might want be interested in an alternate outcome of their life.
But you shouldn't say any more, because the end of the movie is its best part.
Yeah.
I won't say more.
No, that's good. Yeah, right. But because it's not just about it goes to explore these questions that you just raised of redemption, of wondering what would life have been like if just that split second had been different, and maybe on the other planet, are you up there too? Is there? Did that split second not happen there? Perhaps the wife is still alive. Perhaps you're in MIT up on the other Earth, But it, and I think too, especially when you say when life kicks the shit out of you, all of us who've had that happen, which would be all of us, you kind of wish maybe sometimes that there was that alternate universe, or if I could just live in that, if I could create that. But you see, I think that's what you've done as filmmakers. I think that why these films are so interesting is that you, because you did break the rules, because you didn't follow the traditional route, you're giving us something very, very fresh, and it's not. I don't think you could do the cookie cutter. I don't think you know how to do the cookie cutter, and thank God for that. I mean.
Well, I think it's something you said earlier, even when we were backstage, when you were talking about going to film school. I think if we'd tried to make any of these films at film school, some of the threads of it would have been pulled out. And certainly if we tried to make them within LA or the Hollywood system. I mean, when we wrote those scripts, there was a moment where at first we were like, okay, well, now we need to get financing, right? And how can we bump into somebody at a coffee shop that can give us some money to make these movies, or attach a star?
I think I think that was the first question you got at Sundance. Where'd you get the money to make this movie? Because and I can't remember what your answer was, but it's.
Well, we didn't. I mean, Another Earth, we just started shooting. We went to Mike's mom's house because it was the one place we could stay for free and eat for free, and we shot in Mike's mom's school, and we used Mike's mom's car and cast Mike's mom in the movie, and she was also the security, and it was the Mike's mom show. And it was my sister, who was unemployed at the time, me, our friend Liang, who had just come over from China and didn't have a job, Mike, and the four of us were in bunk beds, Mike's old bunk beds that his brothers used to sleep in, and we would wake up every day and just be like, okay, well, what of this movie can we shoot if we don't have any other actors but Brit? And so we would just shoot all the scenes that I was in. I mean, it was At the end of the movie, there's that scene that happens in the fog. We actually shot that the first day because I woke up for a run at like 5 a.m. and there was this insane fog over New Haven. And I woke Mike up and I was like, there's this fog out there. We should shoot it. And he's like, let's shoot the end. And I was like, Mike, we haven't even cast anyone else in the movie. And he's like, doesn't matter. We'll just try it. And we went to Joann Fabrics and bought a green yard of green screen fabric. And Liang stood up on a chair. He's like 5'1" or something. Stands by the chair holding this. And he's just holding the green screen fabric like this with both of his arms. And that's how we did the ending of the film. That is the shot that's in the movie.
God.
It's just Liang on a chair with the green screen, and me, we did this side, and then like, okay, like move over here, and and that's how we did the end of the film.
There was not a nun in sight saying you can't do it.
No kidding. And again, I'm not going to tell you the end, but it literally, when you do see it, and those of you who've seen it, it's one of the best endings and end shots of well, it wasn't actually, there's something happens there, but it's one of the best endings of any movie I've seen in the last decade. It just, and you don't know where this is going to go. You don't know what's going to happen. You're completely surprised by it. You're completely moved by it in a very emotional way, and you're also a little shocked too. It has all these elements, and the way you just described it. Like,
I mean, it was
like an afterthought while you're running and before you have had your coffee.
Yeah, but that's, this is what you were getting on earlier, which is that, what they're doing in Finland, which is they're saying that the biggest part of education is also the time after school in which you play with your friends and go for a run and remember like what it's like when the sunlight comes through the trees, and that education or making movies, all these things are ephemeral. And if you try to like put it in all the boxes, they don't work. And that's maybe why, on some level, not going to film school, having taught each other these things, or making movies for nothing and making up the rules as you go, rather than somebody being like, well, we've given you $1 million to make this movie, so now you're going to do it this way, and you're going to put this actor in it, and you're going to take these notes that we give you. If Another Earth had gotten notes, I mean, there's no way that movie would have survived the note process. It was too fucking weird.
No, absolutely. No,
people would have been like, this doesn't make sense. What are you talking about?
This movie would have been crushed. First of all, you never would have got a second meeting. And the first meeting would have been with you might have had to start like with, if you were just going to an agency, you have the youngest person just out of college and is looking for, I mean, you just would have been so thrown into the black hole of Hollywood had you chosen that way, or had waited for, at the film festival here too, young people come, how can I sell my script? And I always tell them, you can't. You can't. If you've written a script, God bless you, first of all. But no one will make your movie for you other than you. And that's how you, especially, I think, if I can just, specifically, because, have you acted at all, Zal? I don't know if you have or not, but.
I found out that he did.
Oh, he did?
I had a little to drink with his mom one night, and I found out that you were an actor.
Yeah, when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling
I have a feeling that what's really going to happen is that Zal's going to end up acting.
And Brit's going to end up directing.
Yeah.
And we're going to do-si-do.
But you, I'll let you say it in your own words, because you were saying to me that that as an actor, you quickly figured out that to get a great role, you were probably going to have to write it yourself. Oh, yeah. That thought process of where the light bulb went off in your head that said.
But that process wasn't quick.
It took a while, yeah. I mean, I went out to LA and I tried auditioning for things, and then couldn't get any parts. But then the realization that happened at some point. Soul crushing right there. Because you're looking for legitimacy. I think that's the big problem, is when you feel like you've got this whisper, the whisper Zal talked about. It's so, you have filled with so much doubt, and you keep looking for somebody to validate the whisper and say, you know what, I hear it too. And I think that's the biggest problem, is that, going on all those auditions, you want someone to be like, my God, you're great. Yes, you have this part. And it doesn't happen. And not only that, but at some point you realize, I don't even want those parts. Yeah. Why would I want to be in a mini skirt with like 10-inch platform shoes and like fake eyelashes, as the non-speaking girlfriend who just asks questions and bats her eyes while her boyfriend delivers sermons about how, everything should stay the way it is. Like, it seemed like it seemed like a nightmare, you know? So at some point I was like, why have I even been auditioning for this shit?
Wait, tell the chainsaw story.
Oh God, I went in to read for something and I got a call back and I was so excited. And you know, when I would get a call back, like Zoll and Mike and I would celebrate, oh, she got a call back, like maybe this is an offer or not. It was for this movie in which like basically by the second act, everyone's had something cut off, you know? And I was like in the thing doing the reading, and I was like, okay, so you want me to just go to the part where the chainsaw guy comes in and then stop, right? And they're like, no, just go all the way through, act all the way through. And I was like, okay. So I like do the scene, and then I'm like, okay, you know, lying on the floor. Somebody's like cutting my leg. I'm, oh my God, you know. And then by the time I got out of that audition, I was on the street, and I was like, I just pretended to have like all my limbs hacked off in some sad room in the valley. Like, why? Why am I doing
That was
this?
it. You were done after that.
I was done after that. And then I was like, this is crap. Why aren't we writing our own stuff? And then we really did start to take it more seriously, and we started writing stuff, and then I realized that, like, my gosh, especially as a woman, if you want to act and you're a girl, I mean, unless you get a sex change, you better start writing stuff, because there's nothing out there, and the stuff that is out there you probably wouldn't want or is so highly contested over, because there's so much talent. There are a lot of really great young actresses out there, you know, so.
And being a woman, of course, I mean, I belong to the Writers Guild, as I'm sure you do now, and the Directors Guild. And the Writers Guild has a few more women in it, but not anywhere near the majority.
But it should be. It's shocking, actually.
Shocking, yeah, when you think about it, right? Because back in school, when we were in grade school and high school, you guys were the...
No, but especially for us, like, you know, I was born in 81, like, especially for us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, girls were doing amazing things. I never felt any gender inequality growing up. Like, my friends who were girls were kicking everyone's ass in sports, in school, in everything.
That's the one good thing the baby boomers, those of us who raised you, raised you with that.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is actually a big gift. But what's weird is that after having done this work now, my God, Hollywood is a very sexist place. And I think it's just reflecting the world, actually. It's a super sexist place.
But it's really hard, especially if you want to direct a film. I don't know, I think it's like 3% of the DGA are actual directors, and the other women are maybe second ADs or whatever, but there's hardly any women that direct movies. It's a real...
No. But what's interesting is it's so interesting to me, all the young men who are directing now who are interested in strong women. Like, I've never seen that before. Like, you know, Mike and Zoll both have...
But also Ponsolt.
But also James Ponsolt, you know, who did Spectacular Now and Smashed, or... I mean, even Nick Jarecki, who did Arbitrage. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to do that script is because I read it and I was like, wait, the progeny that's taking over the banking empire is the daughter, not the son? Like, what a strange twist of, you know? So I think things are maybe starting to change, like, as...
Oh, yeah, no, I think they will change. I think the more of us that die off, the better... I mean, it's why gay marriage, it's why gay people are going to be able to, and now last night, state number 12 and 13 made it legal. And that's the way it's going to be, because
What's it in Michigan?
It's illegal and made part of the Constitution in that evil 04 election. It's in the Constitution that you can't get married, not just against the law. It's just horrible. But the bright side.
Thank God our constitutions are amendable in this country.
That's right, and thank God for you and your generation, because, and I know this from our daughter and others I see, you're not homophobes, at least certainly not at the level of our grandparents or parents. You're not going to continue the racism. It's just not. I just see it really changing, and you do look at people as people, and you're not thinking about the gender thing or the race thing or all the things that we had to grow up with, and that's why I think it's going to get better, and I think that's why people who are gay and lesbian are going to be able to marry each other very soon, all across the country except Mississippi, or Michigan-sippy. We're a sad state. I don't want to get into that, but because we're great. We've done so many great things for the world, and the whole union movement began here, and we were the first English-speaking government in the world to eliminate the death penalty in the 1850s, and we don't believe in it. Even the Republicans here don't believe in it. So many good things about the state. But how'd I do? But I do believe that. I believe that you guys are going to fix this. And I'm glad to hear you're optimistic about that. So.
I mean, I feel optimistic about, the fact that it seems like our generation isn't even thinking about those things. We almost take them as a given. Like we really feel that it's going to happen, as you're saying. And
Yeah,
but now the stories have to reflect that.
yeah.
It's hard.
Right. But good. Now, like with the East, who's the distributor of this film?
Searchlight, Fox Searchlight.
Oh, okay. Well, they're I think one of the best that do this. But it must have also been a difficult film for them to figure out how to release and how to promote, because this is a film about a group of young people who decide that the world is in pretty bad shape in terms of corporate control and the environment and everything, and they form a group that is, the government will call them terrorists, but they do things like, let's say the BP oil spill happens. They will break into the Hamptons home of the CEO of BP when he and the family aren't there and dump oil all over the entire mansion, in the carpet and the furniture and everything, just to see how he would like an oil spill.
At his house.
At his house. So clearly illegal. But the film actually is, I mean, it's more nuanced than this, and it's not just a black and white thing, but it basically puts forth the idea that maybe this generation has to say, hey, if we're going to have our planet,
to start fighting for it.
we have to start fighting for it, and there's some brave things that are said and done in this film, and you also have Ellen Page in it, and Alexander Skarsgård, and really wonderful cast. But tell me how it's been in terms of just trying to get that film out there to the American audience. Then we're going to open it up for some questions here.
Well, Fox wanted to make this movie. They made it from the beginning, and it was interesting. We were suspicious of why they wanted to make this so at first. We were like, really?
Because you're thinking Fox, Murdoch.
Yeah, but we're also just
But it's also Fox and The Simpsons. And
yeah, of course. Yeah, and Fight Club and stuff. But we were just thinking also just of the system, the studio system, for all the things you were saying, which is that it would be a hard movie to get people to see on the other end of it. And so, but they were very passionate about it. But it was hard for them even. I mean, this stuff is hard. It's hard to take in. We had to, but it was fun because doing it with a studio, you make it more nuanced because the two sides are constantly in play, which is fun for us. We like our stories to have two sides to them.
So you didn't mind the back and forth of that, and that was good?
No, I think I learned a lot from it. I mean, it's a film about anarchy, which is sort of leaderless. Making a film with the studio is like that. It is.
That's an interesting way to put it, right?
It is. If you like collective action,
Yeah,
right? You like
right.
collectives.
Yeah.
Make a movie with a group. If you like being a dictator, make a low-budget film because no one's going to tell you anything.
Right.
Ever.
Now, what's your background? What city did you grow up in?
I was born in France but grew up in Washington, D.C.
Born in France. So your parents are Iranian?
My parents are Iranian refugees, yeah.
Okay.
Who left in 79, and then moved to France and then to
here.
America.
And then and your mom has become a quite well-known chef and cookbook author. And you want to tell them who your mom is?
Yeah, my mom thought that my mom had to leave Iran, the country that she grew up in. Though she'd gone to college in America, she'd gone back to Iran, and she had to leave it when she was in her early 30s, which is my age now. And I think to myself, if I had to leave America and go to China and just raise a family in China and live in China, like what a strange experience that would be, and never go back to America. And so my mother thought that her gift to her children, but also to all the children who were, of Iranians who had left, would be to bring something of the past, which was for her food. And so she started writing these cookbooks, and they've become sort of the definitive Persian cookbooks, and that has been her legacy to us. And so, it's a cool thing my mom did.
What's also cool about that is that I think because of that idea and because of realizing what food can do, like when you go and eat at Zal's mom's house, like you are well fed, like epic meals of food just keeps coming out of the kitchen and all these people around and the conversation that happens when you're inspired by good food and everybody. As a result, food became an important part of our sets. We didn't have any money, but we put a lot of time and energy into, I remember when we were making Sound of My Voice out of my apartment in Beechwood, I'd kicked my sister out and made her go live with a boyfriend, and we turned her bedroom into the actor's bedroom, Chris Denham, who came in from New York, and the living room was production headquarters, and everybody had a key to the apartment, so interns would just start coming at 7 in the morning, and I'd be like in my towel. And Zal would come in early, and he would come into the kitchen, and he wouldn't have any money then, but he'd have gotten some groceries from Trader Joe's, and he would make these wonderful little sandwiches for everybody. And so everybody was working really hard, everybody was working for free, but everybody would take a break at lunch and be really well fed. And I don't know, something about that experience I realize is from your mom, and the part of food and friendship being the fuel for making movies. Like you can't hammer movies into place. You've got to love them into place. And maybe food is a part of it, and your mom gave us that. It's a good gift.
Yeah, it must. That's very, very sweet to say. And your household must have been. Can I also say who your brother is?
Sure.
And did his career happen at the same time?
No, before we were inspired by them, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
His brother is a member of the rock group Vampire Weekend, and who happened to be in the theater when I saw The East. And
my brother texted me, Mike, this is Sunday of our opening weekend, texted me, Michael Moore is seeing The East. And I was like, fuck. Because, Michael had been such a huge inspiration to us. I mean, living in D.C., right, and going to Georgetown, which you were saying, the Georgetown branch is not the most creative branch. And when you're in D.C., I live in L.A. now, so I know that when you're in D.C., who the president is, who the government is, really affects you. The mood of your city changes. The environment, the things. I remember when Bush was president, this great antique store run by my friend's mom, which sold old, great old American furniture, had been shut down. And in its place came a place that sold bedazzled, jeweled, ruby and diamond American flag pins. That's where we were going. But anyway, in the middle of the total Republican sort of iron control over DC, I went to go see Fahrenheit 9/11 in the theater, and I remember Tucker Carlson was sitting behind me, and he was talking the whole time. And afterwards, I came up to him and I was like, we just get one fucking movie. You have everything else. Couldn't you just give us that movie? He's like, it's not just your movie. I liked it too. And I was like, wow, you're changing Tucker Carlson's mind. And it was a moment where I saw movies actually change someone. And I saw the box office actually show that. And it was a great beacon of hope for me. So when my brother texted me that, it got me very excited. So thank you for inviting us here.
Well, thank you for saying that. The biggest fear of the Bush re-election committee was that Republicans would go see the movie, and someone in Bush's administration personally told me what happened, of how Karl Rove hired a pollster, a famous pollster, I won't say who it is, and they polled the movie in 3 different cities with audiences to figure out how's this going to affect the election. And the worst news that they found out was that, this was the statistic, 10% of Republican women who see Fahrenheit 9/11 decide after they've seen the movie to either vote for Kerry or not vote at all.
Wow.
And when an election was going to be really close, so their whole campaign against the movie shifted from trying to debate me on the issues to their thinking is, we have to make sure none of our people cross through the threshold door into that movie, or we are going to lose some of them.
Wow.
And so the whole campaign on Fox and Rush and O'Reilly and all that, was to attack me. Michael Moore hates America. You're anti-American if you even think of buying a ticket for this. You hate him. You hate the troops if you go. You remember the whole push against it was all about that.
Because Zal had told me to go see the film. He called me and he was like, "You have to see this movie."
I don't remember that.
Yeah, and I went, and my family, my parents are Republican, everybody, they're in Florida, Central Florida, and I go to this theater to see the movie, and the whole audience basically is very radically Republican, and I'm sitting in between my parents, and I'm thinking like, oh God, this isn't gonna go well. And they loved it. I mean, they loved it, and they were so moved by it. And I remember like everybody talking on the way to the car, and I remember calling Zal and being like, I think my parents just crossed over to the other side because of this movie. And it was so exciting to see that, because I'd been arguing with them for years. I mean, I used to send them packages where I would like clip newspaper clippings and like highlight things of trying to get them to vote for Kerry. And no matter how much information I presented them, I couldn't crack it open. And then the movie did that, and I sat between them and like watched my parents like take something in a way that I had been impossible before, and that was an amazing
but they
thing to witness.
probably voted for Bush that election, but they ended up voting for Obama, and so maybe that also, the film also set that groundwork up.
Yeah, no, I in the long view of it now, I can see what happened. And we almost, just not enough Republicans saw it. But when it opened...
In theaters, necessarily, but later...
Later, of course, yes, then on home video and Netflix and everything else, it really... No, I know I do know this, and I know... But it opened at '1 that weekend of all movies. First time a documentary had done that. But it opened at '1 in Jackson, Mississippi, in Birmingham, Alabama, Fort Bragg. We're getting all these numbers in, and it was just every red state, we were the #1 film that weekend, and it was just like, we were like, oh my God. We weren't just making this for the church of the left. This was also to, and we didn't make it to, it wasn't like a pro-Kerry film. We were trying to humanize things. But so thank you for saying that. I don't mean to, I'm sorry I shifted this to that.
No, but these things are all connected. I mean, it's not a shift to that. It's that you see these beacons of light in times like, we don't live in a time like that right now. In a time like that, there was a stranglehold there. And so for us, it makes us, when we're making something like The East, there aren't other films that we're using as models that are narrative fiction. They're a documentary that we're using as model to your documentary, so it's actually very connected.
Well, I did not know that, and I don't know what to say. I'm really honored that you said that, and I saw your brother there. He saw me actually because he didn't stay for all the credits, but I mean the main credits.
Rostam busted.
But so I'm still sitting there. I'm sitting there in the aisle. I'm just like, wow. I don't want to leave. I feel like I am at a church service, and I'm not going to leave until the last song is sung, because I've just seen something I haven't seen before. I'm so excited to show it here in Traverse City today, because it's and
Are any of you guys going to go see it?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
If you haven't seen it and it's playing in the cities you're from, go see it. I'm going to bring it back after the festival for a real run at our theater.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
thank you.
That's so nice to hear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's nice.
No. And you are good people, and you are good for this art form and good for the world, and to be able to go to a movie and think and be entertained at the same time, and to have your intelligence as the audience respected. Wow, it's just, I didn't want to leave the seat. I wanted to watch it again, frankly. I wanted to sit there in the old days where you would movies just rank continuously. I would just sit there and watch it again. We should open up to some questions here, and just raise your hand, and if there's not a microphone, I'll just call on you and I'll repeat it. Right here with the green shirt. Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming. I'm really, really super excited. I love Sound of My Voice and The East. I think they're both amazing.
Oh, thank you.
My fiance and I see over 100 movies last year, and we randomly saw Sound of My Voice, never saw a trailer or anything, and we were blown away. I mean, your performance is incredible.
Oh, gosh.
And so I lost my train of thought, but
that was good so far.
That was great.
So now that you have these movies and you've written these movies, are you I mean, I read a lot of, Hollywood goings, abouts and things, and I see your name pop up all the time for, these big movies coming up, like she's one of the ones being considered for this, huge role in this huge movie. And so are those roles coming at you? Do you feel like, you want to stay in the indie realm? Or are there parts for women in bigger movies that are interesting?
That's such a good question. Thanks for your kind words about sound of my voice. It's really nice to hear. I think it's funny. I don't see the delineation as much between indie or not indie. I always think of it as like, is it a good story or is it not a good story? And if it's a good story and it's being made with a good group of people, that's exciting. Even if it's being made within the studio system, I think there are ways in which really good things manage to survive that gauntlet of filmmaking. But it's hard. Yeah, it's tricky. And I don't want to stop writing now. I think if in the beginning I felt like writing was, maybe we all a little bit did, we were like, Zal wanted to direct, Mike wanted to direct, I wanted to act, and we couldn't figure out how to get those jobs, because those are not jobs you can just be like, can I intern for that, or like, there's no way to really begin. And so writing, teaching ourselves to write seemed like a way to do that. And that took a long time. That took like 6 years of reading screenplays and reading screenwriting books and writing screenplays that didn't work and throwing them out and starting again. And somewhere in that process, though, I think we all actually fell in love with writing, and I like that just as much as acting. And I think also because of a lot of the things we've been talking about, there's so much room in storytelling to do interesting things. Like when I hear this story about Finland, my brain is immediately like, oh, how could you just in a fiction film, just as the backdrop, show a different way in which education could work? I mean, there's all kinds of ways of smuggling good ideas across through storytelling. So hopefully I'll get a chance to keep writing stuff. Yeah.
Are you worried that she's just going to be a huge Hollywood star? Yeah, I think you will write more. And
certainly.
I think I was so excited that you were going to come here, because I thought, I'm going to look so good in 5 years because you are going to be so huge.
Please. That's ridiculous.
And Zal is going to be up there.
Please, I don't need to be anywhere. But Sound of My Voice, the way to see Sound of My Voice is how you saw it, without a trailer. So if any of you guys are interested by what we've had to say and want to see Sound of My Voice, it's on Netflix, but it's also playing on HBO this month. Just watch it without a trailer. Don't watch the trailer. Don't read about it. Just go see it, because Brit plays a woman who runs a cult, and she claims to be. Okay, I won't say anything more. I won't say anything more.
Giving it away.
She put her hands on her ears, so I won't.
Who's next? Yes, on the aisle.
Michael, I agree we're changing. Racially, we're not changing fast enough, and we all know that.
We're slow. We're a wonderful country of slow learners.
Well, we all know about the Trayvon Martin thing. We got up this morning, put on the news in our motel, and a African-American man was shot in his driveway by the police just pulling into his garage.
Grabbing his cigarettes, right?
Grabbing his cigarettes. They fired 15 shots at him. I guess he's not, I don't know where he's okay. He's surviving. But
where'd this happen?
Central Florida. I don't remember the name of the town. Central Florida, and they interviewed the police chief who defended it to the hilt. They gave him a lot of time, and this was on CNN early morning news. So I'd like to,
Well, thank you for that, but the reason we came here is because we don't want to listen to the news today.
We still need to change a lot more.
No, but we do have a black president, though. I have to say that we do have a black president, and I've just been traveling around Europe with the East, and Europe is so glad to tell us that they're so much better than us all the time, but they don't have a black president. They don't have a president named Hussein. Ain't gonna happen anytime soon.
That's right.
Like so.
That's right.
But yeah. Sometimes what he's saying is interesting, because sometimes I feel like when there's one person that gets let into the, what seems to be the ruling class, it actually doesn't mean that the watershed has opened. It's like,
right.
I feel like this happens with women all the time. Like, and you'd see it in the investment banks. Like they'd let one woman onto the board, but it's really a way of keeping all the other women back. It's like she's the token woman on the board, and that's
The false positive.
yeah, the false positive.
Make it
So,
look like things have,
yeah.
you know.
But it's still, I mean, it's a beginning
Get us
of
to
the
shut
one.
up. Yeah.
Right. Who's next here? Where's the microphone?
Be right over here in the
Okay,
corner.
all right.
I have to ask, Company We Keep was a wonderful movie, but what was it like working with Robert Redford?
And it's funny because we kept talking about seeing him from 100 yards off. as a
You
PA.
never, Britt never actually encountered him.
He was always 100 yards off, and I was just.
Wait, can I answer that for a second? Britt called me from set from Vancouver and just said, "Oh my God, it's like something else." She really did, and like she finished Company You Keep on like Sunday, and on Monday was on the set for the East, and we started shooting the East. And I had never seen this person who I know so well. I had never seen her like that. She was vibrating at a different frequency. So now you can finish it.
Apparently, I'm no longer vibrating at that frequency. So.
Now by day 3, you were back to yourself. Let's just be honest.
He's really incredible. I think that there's something about, what's weird about a Redford set is that it gets, as you're driving to the set even, everybody's voices get hushed. The driver stops talking, all the actors in the cars. And then like as you get out of the car and you're like walking towards set, it's like everybody's just in this whisper. By the time you get to where the camera is and Robert and the actors are the center of this thing that's happening, it's like nobody's talking at all. Everybody's like using sign language. And it's so still. It's so still. And I think it's out of like this kind of collective reverence that everybody has for the body of work that he's done. And also, I mean, for me, just witnessing Sundance, I mean, talk about what one person with a sort of anarchic mind can do to change the way things are. I mean, that festival is the reason that we will maybe get to continue making and sharing work. And it's because one guy just decided, there needs to be some sort of harbor for filmmakers and for them to show their work. And I remember him telling me stories about how his agents and managers at the time were like, "You've lost your mind." I mean, he was at the height of his career as an actor. He could do anything he wants. And he's like, "I'm going out to Utah to, get a couple friends together to start these labs." I mean, they all thought he'd gone crazy. And so yeah, it was a tremendous thing to get to spend some time with somebody who's such an artist in the work that he makes, and also just in the way he lives his life and what he thinks is important. That was very inspiring.
Yeah, you got to play a University of Michigan student.
Yeah, I did. I did. That was very cool.
Not the Flint branch either.
Yeah, it was.
The real.
That was the real deal.
That's up next.
That was actually the Vancouver branch, though. We shot in Vancouver.
Yeah, they shot in Vancouver to make it look like Ann Arbor.
Yeah, it would have been. I would have loved to have shot in Ann Arbor. That would have been really fun. But tax breaks and all these sorts of things. I don't know how they. Yeah, it's hard to make movies these days. You have to really find ways to do it.
It was easy here until a couple of years ago.
Other corner?
government changed. Where are we at? Yes.
The Company You Keep was a lot of fun. Thank you. And for those of you who've yet to see it, the one shot that actually took place in Ann Arbor is the Graduate Library, the Ann Arbor branch of the University of Michigan Graduate Library. Stands in for the University of Chicago, so that's a lot of fun. Zal, you have a deep background in food, quality food. And you and Brit, in preparing for the East, spent times as freegans. How did you manage to overcome whatever prejudice you may have about eating garbage? And how did you find that experience?
Thanks for asking
Explain
that
what a
question.
freegan is.
Yeah. So, that's what Michael just said. So freeganism is the practice of not spending any money. So living off of the grid of capitalism. So Britt and I couldn't get Sound of My Voice made, and Other Earth hadn't been made yet either. And we were feeling very frustrated and we had no money. So we decided to go on an adventure, but when you have no money and you want to go on an adventure, freeganism is very appealing because it's free. And so we had been reading about a lot of these sort of groups, direct action groups, and who had sort of anarchic principles and all this stuff, and they would write these beautiful manifestos, but they have no bylines or anything because they don't believe in that. And we were really moved by that, and we'd been reading about it on the internet, and we were like, well, why don't we go try to find some of these groups? So we did, and one of these groups that we lived with, there were 100 kids, and they were living in this abandoned house in East Liberty in Pittsburgh, and one of the amazing things about groups like this is that one group would wake up early in the morning and go to the dumpsters, but like nice dumpsters like Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, and they would get the food because legally these places have to throw out all the food by the sell-by date, right? So there's all this packaged bread, all sorts of stuff, vegetables, peanut butter, and one group gets it, and another group is ready at the house to make that food into those groceries into food, into lunch or breakfast to feed everybody. And they would do that 3 meals a day. And at first, when I first went on the road, I was a little put off by it. And I don't think it's the food bag. I just couldn't get over the fact eating garbage seemed really strange to me. But then on the second night there, or third night, I had such hunger pains that I went downstairs in the middle of the night, and there was these rows of sort of bread and peanut butter. And I made myself a peanut butter sandwich, and it was the best sandwich I've ever had in my entire life. And after that, I was a total convert. And we did that 3 meals a day for the whole summer.
Not only that, but a lot of that food, we'd make these meals, and then people in the surrounding area, like in this town, would come and eat as
that
well.
happened in Baltimore,
It's shocking right now how many people are living below the poverty line, how many families suffer, deal with food anxiety, like just don't know if they're going to be able to give their kids a proper meal that night. And so for us, it was so shocking to be like, wait a second, like all this food that is garbage is actually good food that's just being moved out of the stores. And then there are all these kids in these neighborhoods who are going to bed hungry at night, and then they can't focus in school the next day because they just haven't had anything to eat. And so that was sort of the beginning of some kind of realization that this group, this sort of anarchic group that we were spending time with, they were really onto something about how waste, what we consider waste, is actually abundance. And a large part of what is not working in this country is our perspective or mentality about waste and all that we're willing to throw away, and the sort of culture of waste. And the dumpster experience really turned that around for us.
The way that you capture, though, in the East, showing anarchists or showing people who are anti-capitalist or on the left or whatever. Usually, anybody on the left, when portrayed in a movie, is not very likable, often adult, or so like a robot because they're so PC and everything, and that's being ridiculed, of course. And this movie doesn't do that. It doesn't make them out to be saints, but it says they're human beings, and they have a point to make, and maybe we should listen to some of this, even if we don't necessarily agree with their methods. Yeah. They're all change throughout history has happened because of people who are radical in their thinking and radical in their actions, and nothing really moves forward until that first person comes out of the closet. There's not going to be any gay marriage down the end of the road. Somebody's got to take that first step and take the risk, and that person has made it better incrementally for everybody else that comes after them. Who's next?
Right here.
Yes.
Hi. Both of you are very funny. So, especially you, Zal. So, why don't you guys write a comedy?
Brit's always trying to get me to do that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I promise I did not plant that question. No. I'm always saying to Zal, we need more humor. Sometimes you gotta make people laugh their way through something, and yeah.
I know. It's Michael's tenant, so it's yours. It should be yours.
I know. That's one of the things that I love the most about Michael's movies, is that you can be like hysterically laughing, and then the next moment like crying, and then laughing again, and then. I don't know, Saul, what, can we write a comedy together?
Yeah, cool.
I like saving it for just like Brit and moments like this.
All this, yeah, okay. Okay, and then the second question is to Michael. Why is it so freezing in this theater. Right on, yeah.
Because you control all things, Michael.
I honestly don't have the answer to that. I know as we get older, we're more sensitive to it. I'm putting myself in your. Yeah, I don't have the answer for that. I'll tell you, at the State Theater, we kept the old environmentally wonderful system because there wasn't air conditioning. This theater's 100 years old. And the last iteration of it that you're going to see today is built in 1949. So there wasn't air conditioning like we have now. And they cool the theater back then, and we still do. There's a river behind the theater, and we blow air, essentially, off the
amazing.
The cold water of the river, and it comes through the vents, and that's how the State Theater. But you can't. There's no thermostat, and it's up to the river, so you can't adjust it. So sometimes it's really warm in there. Sometimes it's just freezing cold, and
that sounds nice.
Sorry about that, but yes, comedy. I'll just throw this out to you. I think part of it too is I think comedy is harder than drama.
Much harder.
All of us know we could make just about anybody we know cry if we said or did the right. Within 30 seconds, I think we can get tears. But to get laughter, that's
really hard.
That's a tough cookie, yeah. And it's by the way, you have the program guy back there. I always look for comedies, and usually I find them in other countries. Adult comedies, not for tweens, but. When God bless the tweens, but there's two comedies
God
from Spain.
Bless the tweens.
Well, they get picked on. They get picked on a lot, and then I don't want to go into that. But anyways, two comedies from Spain that are in the festival. One's called Bypass, and the other one's called The World Is Ours. And The World Is Ours is an anti-capitalist film set in the economic crash of Spain. And and these two guys decide to rob a bank to get back, but they're not like the characters in the East. They're Dumb and Dumber. I mean, they're completely stupid, but they don't know this great political thing they're also doing. And it's like Dog Day Afternoon meets Dumb and Dumber, basically. If you have a chance to see them, though,
it sounds so good.
It's like I wish we did make more of those kinds of films because. Comedy's a great vehicle to deliver the things you want to say.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, especially right now, I think the audiences want to laugh. Life is difficult, to laugh for a lot of people. And so you if you want to go there and really talk about complicated and potentially controversial ideas, I think you've got to make people laugh through it, yeah.
The spoonful of sugar.
Yeah. Helps medicine good.
We have time for two more questions, and in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I just want to say so far this has been a wonderful, wonderful panel. And I would agree.
Thanks for having me.
And I didn't even, these kids up front know, I didn't even expect this panel this morning, and I'm so happy that I'm here. I'm hanging on every word. I'm your age. I get everything you're saying I relate to. Pirates of the Caribbean sucks. Thank you, Michael. And I want to say to you, too, that you affected me like you affected them, where I watched Bowling for Columbine, and I live in Metro Detroit, and I drive by Kmart headquarters a lot, and I think to myself, of the scene in that movie where you were there with one of the victims from Columbine, and I'm like, Kmart, I'm still pissed at you, And so thank you for that. But, I did the status quo thing, too. I started off breaking the rules. I auditioned for Tisch. I didn't get in because I'm average. That's fine. But I got a degree in business admin, and I work in marketing, and it's like, blah. But I want to break the rules, and I'm passionate about a lot of things, and I act in community theater, and I write on a blog on Huffington Post, and I do what I have to do, and I make a living. But you have me very inspired, and my nun is kind of sleeping right now or whatever. But my question, here I am with my question is, why do you do what you do? Is it just passion, or is there something greater that you're trying to achieve with this filmmaking? And I kind of feel like I know what Michael Moore's answer would be to this, but but what is it that drives you to do what you do?
Oh gosh, what a good.
We're trying to become rich.
No, I think not to not to be embarrassing, Michael, but I think in large part it's that when you watch movies like Bowling for Columbine or Fahrenheit 9/11 and you see their impact, I mean, having come from a very conservative town and a conservative family and being very opened by both of those experiences, I remember thinking, oh my God, like narrative has this strange power to open people, to seduce them. I mean, we still come to theaters and we love the feeling of sitting in the dark and opening ourselves. And so much of life and working has become about closing yourself and not being empathetic and not sort of surrendering, you know, or being willing to sort of surrender your disbelief and to imagine. And the theater still seems like this really special place in which people are willing to be childlike and innocent and believe in impossible things again. And so I don't know. I feel excited to be a part of storytelling because it seems to me like it's still a way to change things or to move things in a positive direction.
And just to be part of that, to be part of that feeling is a nice feeling, I think.
Yeah. Or to attempt to contribute something, even if you don't quite, is maybe still worth something.
I agree.
And you probably don't know why I do this, but I will say it because I've never asked, because people assume it's, you know. I do it because it brings me joy, and it makes me happy. And I do it because I make these movies because it helps to fuel my optimism. I really do believe that we can make things better for each other, personally, in our communities, the world. And I'm not a cynic. I believe that we are capable of some incredible things, and I believe that they'll happen in my lifetime. And just to add to what Brit said, sitting in the dark with 200 strangers and having a collective experience like that, in that childlike way, because when we were children, we believed we could do anything. And we believed actually that the world was a wonderful place. And we were
right. We were right to think that we can do anything.
That is correct. And somehow it either gets beaten out of us, or we're told so many lies that we believe it's one way when it really is the other. And movies, the theme of this year's festival is one movie can change your life. And I so believe that. We were talking about To Kill a Mockingbird the other day, and anybody can name their film, but I just so believe that what you're doing and what the filmmakers, most people I know that I work with or whatever, are doing this. It isn't for the money, and it's because we're trying to communicate with you. This is not only a collaborative art form, which means we have to learn to work and play well with others. Which is the way we want the world to be, right? It's a communicative art form. We are really trying to share something with you, and we're not trying to preach at you. The documentaries that preach that last 5 days in the theaters. We want to start a discussion. We want this dialogue. We want you. I want people to leave the theater. I want them skipping up the aisles, even after I've shown them just there's these horrible shootings or there's this war going on or whatever. I don't want you depressed. And that's why the humor is in my films, because it's the pressure cooker valve that releases the depression that you feel watching my movies. And the humor allows you to have the emotion I want you to have, hopefully, which is anger. I want you, because anger is an active emotion. Depression is passive. Taking it on yourself, let's have a drink. I can't take this anymore. Anger is like, you go up the aisle, yes, and you pass the concession stand and you go, do you guys have any pitchforks or torches here? I'm a citizen of a democracy, and I'm going to go do something. I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it. That's, to me, is
powerful.
That's powerful. Yeah. And you've just spent 90 minutes with me, and it's like, so, and I know, and that's how I felt at the end of the East. I was just like, you know, and it fueled my optimism. That you exist. I didn't know you, I didn't know your brother, I didn't know anybody, but it didn't matter because I did know you, and you became part of me and me of you with what I saw on that screen for those 90 minutes. And I am so grateful for it. And I thought, Jesus, is there any way I could convince you to come here to Traverse City? I know you're shooting another film, you're working on the next thing. You're very busy people. Brit's got 5 films coming out in the next year. The fact that you came here and are going to be at the East, and I'm just personally saying this. I'm just meant an awful lot to me, and the woman is right. I mean, I've done these panels now. This is the 9th year of doing these panels, and this may be the best panel that I've done in terms of the intelligence that you've offered and the heart that you've given. It would, if anybody was at the Vim Vendors panel last year, this rivals that, seriously. And I think you've given everyone here a lot of hope and a lot to think about. And maybe some of us in the audience will let the whisper come back into their ears. So thank you very much for being here. Thank all of you for being here. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.